Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to another segment of Reset with Coach Lowe. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to have you back again. I hope that you have been enjoying the different topics that I've talked about in the past couple of weeks. It has been a delight to spend time with you and to just share all that's going on in this mind of mine. Well, today on Reset, we are going to talk through conflict resolution. Conflict resolution, it can be really challenging, especially if you do not have a third party. So I am here today to just kind of give you a couple of steps towards how to engage effectively in conflict resolution. So I'm going to share a couple of what I call rules of engagement to conflict resolution. And none of these, there's no specific order or anything. And you may see me looking down here and there to refer to my notes, but please do not be distracted. I'm just trying to keep myself on task because I can kind of veer off. I have a whole lot going on up here in my mind. And so I have a lot to give and a lot to share, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. So I make sure that I bring my notes along with me to kind of keep me going. So today, again, rules of engagement to conflict resolution. What does conflict resolution, what does conflict mean? So conflict is all about a disagreement, a battle, a issue that you are not in agreement on. And so today I have come to just share a couple of different things that I have found important as a coach to help people to overcome some of those things that they are challenged by, some of those things that they just refuse to stand on. I'm not gonna agree. I don't want to hear your perspective. And whatever those arguments may be about, I think that it is so valuable when we take the time to understand one another. And so there is no particular order, but here they are. So one of the things that I find important is making sure that when you approach conflict resolution, trying to resolve whatever the issues may be, it is very, very important for you to come into the conversation with your guard at a relaxed state. Not defensive, not with your guard on, ready to fight, ready to, take the argument to the next level, but to just be at rest within yourself and allow yourself to communicate and take your time through the process. Be sure that you are not asking the person that you are speaking with to you're not saying things to them like, well, you shouldn't feel that way, because we can't navigate the way what we do or the decisions that we make makes another person feel. We can't navigate that. We can't control that. And to the person that's feeling, to the receiver, you, just because you're feeling it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the truth or it is what the person that is sharing wanted to communicate with you. So I just think that it's really important for us to take note of that. So number two for me would be to speak the truth in love. So while we're telling the truth about a situation, we want to be kind and we want to be fair. And we don't want to approach conflict resolution with the thought in mind that I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me. So that's not something that we want to do. That will keep you in a posture of conflict, if you will. So it is just very, very important for us to just be at peace in our approach. We don't want to to be defensive and ready to fight. And we want to be kind. We want to be loving. We want to share. Sometime before I have really difficult conversations with people that I love, I will say something. I will preface the conversation with, there's a really challenging conversation that we need to have. And before we approach it, I just want to develop some ground rules. And those things are, I love you, period. And I need you to be clear about that. But I do need to discuss where I stand with this particular situation. That I am not asking you to necessarily change your mind or your position, but I need for you to hear me. And so I just think that it's so important for us to share those things when we are communicating with other people. The next one I would have to say is to be patient. Please be patient with your friends. Please be patient with those that you are in relationship with. Because when we are impatient, that is just another thing that can really cause conflict to continue to be perpetuated. And so, because that is not the goal, it is just imperative that we just rest and we are patient and we understand that for some people are contemplators. I have a number of different people that are contemplators in my life. I can be a very decisive person because I'm a thinker. I'm always going through, okay, well, what if this happened? Then I'm going to do this. And not that that is always, what I'm thinking is what the outcome will be. And sometimes it's not even my approach of choice when the time comes, but I am one that is, just a little bit more expedient when it comes to making decisions or when it comes to um, moving forward, if you will. So, but when I am with a contemplator, it shows a level of honor and respect when I am willing to slow down and allow them to process the circumstance or the situation so that they can get it for themselves. And I just think that that is just so very, very important for us to pause sometimes for the sake of others when we are approaching resolving conflict. So another thought is to seek to understand. So when you seek to understand and you're not the person that's like, well, let me just tell you, let me get my stuff in. It's all about me. No, that is not the way that we want to be in relationships. And to be perfectly honest, it's not going to work. It is just not going to work. So it's important for us to be in a place where we can just pause to listen. When we are listening, we should not be talking. So it's important for us to pause to listen in a conversation or when you are attempting to resolve conflict. You are not talking all over each other. One person is listening and the other person is talking. But the person that is sharing their position, where they are in the particular circumstance. And the other person is actively listening. What does that mean? That means you are listening to understand where this person is coming from. You are listening and you are thinking, okay, I really want to understand this person because I care about them. I really want to pause because I need understanding. And if we can't get past this, then it could be a challenge to the remainder of the relationship. And when we are listening to understand, it should be a dialogue and not a monologue. So no one person should be overtaking the conversation um, and doing the most. We really need to make sure that we are not disrespectful and we're not cutting one another off, that we are listening to understand. I think that this is probably one of the biggest ones. And if I were going to put it in order, this probably would have been number one for me. And that would be approach. Approach, your attitude. What is your attitude like when you are attempting to resolve conflict? You want to make sure that your verbals and your nonverbals, you see how I'm very animated. That's just kind of my personality. I move around a lot, but I smile a lot when I'm talking and I talk with my hands. Well, some people can be very uh aggressive in their approach, while others can be very passive and laid back and not really become very confrontational, but just will be a good listener. And that is not a good mix for conflict resolution. It's important that both parties engage, that both parties are sharing, and both parties have a time to listen and download and receive what it is that they're saying. But the other thing is that you want to always be sure, confirm that you're understanding. I'm just going back to the last one just for a second. When you seek to understand, make sure that you are following up with, this is what I heard you say. Is this what you meant? um I believe that I understand when I heard you say this was how I received it. It is so important for us to have that level of dialogue, because if we are not clear about what's happening, there's not going to really be much resolution happening in that particular conversation. So back to approach. The goal is to watch your tone and inflection. You don't want to be talking all like this. That's aggression. And then the other thing is that you don't want to just, be sitting back just kind of like, well, so this whole, well, real passive, super laid back, well, I'ma just let that person do their thing and I'ma just be back here. That usually calls the person that has the more dominant personality to become just a little bit more extra, if you will, just a little bit more aggressive, just a little bit more emotional about whatever the topic is that you are speaking on and that you are seeking resolve to. So I think that it's so important for us not to create more issues. So although we have different personality types, I believe that when we approach each other, regardless of if you are an aggressive personality or if you're a more laid back, passive, non confrontational kind of person, either way, I believe that it is important for us to realize that both people and personality types are valuable. And in order for us to remain in healthy relationships, we have to take the time to communicate where we are so that we can work ourselves through the process to the other side where peace is. So, the another point is to not be doing this. Well, it's your fault. And if you didn't, and if you, it cannot just be all about the other person. We must take personal responsibility, and that in the conflict resolution, that needs to be your space. You can say things like, when you said this, it made me feel like this, and so this was why I responded like X. You can say those things. That is fair. However, nobody can make you feel like anything. You are personally responsible for how you receive whatever another person says. Usually, we respond out of our own personal filters, our own personal experiences. And so it is just important for us to communicate what it is that we're feeling and being sure that we're not making it another person's problem. But even from that standpoint, I think that it's as vitally important that we are clear about putting ourselves in the other person's shoes and considering their perspective. There's always more than one side to the story. If there's ever two or more people involved in any disagreement, there's always more than two perspectives. Or if there is three people, then there's four perspectives because there is also the truth. So as humans, we have our way of filtering through and deciding how we're going to feel as it relates to what has been conveyed or expressed or communicated or shared with us. And so, once again, take personal responsibility for where you are in the situation and be sure to consider the other person and their perspective. This is one of my pet peeves. So, outside of approach, this probably would have been number two. And that is, you don't have to eat the whole elephant at once. So don't stuff the elephant down my throat. It is too large for me to digest. It is too huge for me to chew. So make sure that you are taking the time to think through what it is that you want to discuss so that you are not pulling different things from different places. This doesn't have anything to do with that, but you're trying to attach everything to this one topic that we are trying to resolve right here. So keep it to a minimum. And even if you have to come to the table with a list, with your notes to keep you on course, on the path, make sure that you do that. Do whatever it takes for you so that you can get the understanding that you need. And finally, I just want to kind of talk through this whole conflict resolution thing. So, um, forgiveness is something that should always take place whenever there is disagreement, whenever there has been a hurt. Forgiveness is very necessary because it frees you from the situation, but you're also freeing the other person to allow them to get what it is that they need to grow and develop into who they need to do, and to also allow God to do his perfect work in them. But it is not your, it's you're not the boss of them, so you don't get to control or navigate what their process looks like. We have to be personally responsible for our own stuff. And so I want to encourage you in that when you find yourself in a situation where you need to resolve conflict, be sure that you're not trying to control the other person, whether it is with unforgiveness. Well, you don't deserve. Well, if they don't deserve it, neither do you. So it's important for us to forgive. But when it comes to reconciling, and reconciling is about So if we are in conflict, that usually divides us. So we're separated. But when the conflict is resolved, usually we can turn back face to face and begin to move back towards harmony and friendship, relationship, peace with one another. But that does not always happen because the other person, or it could be you may not be willing to forgive or to understand, or you may have lost respect for that person for one reason or another. So you may be willing to forgive them, but you may need to separate yourself and put some healthy boundaries into place to keep you from getting back to that place again. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're cutting the relationship off altogether, but it could mean that you are putting some boundaries into place to keep both parties safe. So, um, so, and I kept saying resolution, but that's reconciliation. Reconciliation is causing the harmony to come back together again. So hopefully, you are able to work through whatever those issues are that you may find yourself challenged by in your relationships today. And if that is the case, then please let me know that these tips were helpful for you. Please feel free to leave me a message. I would love to hear from you. Um, and I just want to say thank you. Have a phenomenal weekend. I look forward to connecting with you again on tomorrow. And hey, I have something that I want to share. Today is September 22nd, and I am excited that this is the first time that Girl Talk is coming to Dallas with Coach Lowe. So I'm excited. While this is where I live, I had only done Girl Talk in Chicago for the last year. So I'm excited. This is the first night. So I am going to release you and I'm going to get going. So thank you once again for joining me once again on Reset with Coach Lowe. Make it a phenomenal weekend and make sure that you're loving people. You do not have to always be in disagreement. I love you. Mwah! Much happiness and many blessings. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.